I said, in a private conversation, Jews are out to get me in my daily life. Ben Shapiro, Mr. Oh, everybody's being taken out of context in private conversation. It's ruining the discourse. What did Ben Shapiro do with that clip? He shared it to his 2 million followers when I was just some kid, didn't even have a show. Can you believe that? And so I said, Jews are going after me in my daily life. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that. Wow, isn't that crazy? What a crazy thing to say. What a wacky, what a zany, conspiratorial thing to say. Wow, that Nick, he's such a conspiracy theorist. He said that Jewish people are out to get him, and then Ben Shapiro took it and blew it up to 2 million people. And then endorsed Sarah Jong, and then goes after Steve King. I must have been imagining things, right?
And thus we see that Ben Shapiro is not a conservative at all. He's a leftist. He's a cultural Marxist. What you see from Ben Shapiro and these other soi-disant conservatives is exactly the opposite. This idea that it is the purpose of government to maximize the GDP without a consideration of where that GDP goes. In other words, what is the per capita GDP, is not a conservative position. But the conservatives, like Shapiro and Cook and David French and Jonah Goldberg, are effectively courtiers of the 1%. They're paid a few $100,000 a year for arguing that the rich are always right, that no one can be too rich, that it is necessary for the rich to get richer, richer, and richer, and that any attempt to constrain this risks disaster. In the rich, the globalists, the neoliberals, the establishment conservatives have made the West a playground for license and a playground for greed, and to hell with the middle class and the working class. And they're surprised that socialism is making a comeback.
In America, Shapiro contests that some illegal aliens must be allowed to stay. There's a cost to deporting them, right? And some of them are, I'm sure, economically productive people. But in Israel, full-scale deportation is an ugly solution, but the only solution. The children of the Palestinians he's talking about don't even get to vote and influence Israeli elections, as opposed to the children of illegal aliens in America that absolutely vote in American elections. In America, we have to be nuanced and careful, but Israel gets the right to deport everyone, even Israeli Arab citizens.
Zionism is the definition of identity politics. What could be more identity politics than Zionism?
Hey, my kid can't afford it. I can't afford my kid's asthma medicine. Too bad. Welcome to Welcome to Ben Shapiro's America. What a dummy.
There goes his low taxation argument, assuming he's a real conservative. There goes his small government argument, because you're going to have to expand the military and possibly other agencies. Let's see. What else do we have to expand? Oh, yeah, the budget. That means more government spending. Woohoo. Good on you, Mr. Shapiro. Yeah, that's real conservative of you. So here's the thing. It's not just that he supported Bush Jr. heavily. The fact that he said in his article that he wants to essentially invade every other Middle Eastern country out there and replace their dictators. I don't care for his reasoning, by the way. You guys, those who like Ben Shapiro, you really need to be wary of this. Find yourselves a better guy to like.
It's always the most non-rugged, most pussified-looking midgets that want to support war. That's the way that it always is. Real men who've been in conflict know that conflict sucks. The only conflict Ben has ever been in is with a violin getting some note wrong as he prepares for a recital. This is not a dude that is in touch with his masculine side at all. At all. And the idea that some conservatives get off on his tough guy talking points is pathetic, low IQ, and absolutely brain dead.
Everything is inevitably going to lead to war. That's nonsense. It is worth noting, by the way, that Israel was very tepid about the Iraq War in the first place. For all the people who keep saying that Israel was the cause of the Iraq War, go back and look at the evidence. The Israeli government was really not stumping for the Iraq War. They were very, very torn about whether the United States should go to war in Iraq in the first place. That was a George W. Bush initiative. I think it was the right initiative.
Right, so we've got Bibi Netanyahu, and Israel didn't stump for a war with Iraq. Now, you could easily right now, in fact, pause this video right now. Go into YouTube and type in Netanyahu Iraq War, and you're going to see Netanyahu in front of Congress talking all about how he knows for a fact Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and how it's going to be so dangerous for the whole region, right? Ben Shapiro is lying to you. He's lying to you. Netanyahu, clear as day, put out the WMD lies. Let's analyze this here. This is the person that you're supposed to believe is gonna lead the conservative establishment to a new era of victory in the United States as they overthrow the liberals. A guy who's still apologizing for neocon foreign policy mistakes and shitting all over Pat Buchanan, one of the few mainstream politicians that actually has espoused an intelligent, thought-out America First foreign policy that he's been detailing for like the better part of 30 years? Really? This guy right here is going to criticize someone like Pat Buchanan. It's always the most effeminate, midget-like people that want war. People have never been in it. It's so obvious, it's so clear as day, and it's so disgusting on so many levels. I've had enough of dual citizen, people in the United States shilling for one country while claiming United States citizenship and acting like the best interests of their country are the same as the best interests for Americans. It's not. I'm getting to the point now where if you're a dual citizen, I don't even want to hear from you. I don't want to hear about you. I don't trust you.
Ben Shapiro goes out there. He has never contributed to the discourse a single original idea, a single original theory. It's all reheated neoconservatism, reheated neoliberalism. I could predict everything Ben Shapiro says based on watching Milton Friedman's Free to Choose lecture series from the 1970s, and that should tell you everything. So these people are they're not original, they're not fresh, they're not dark, they're not intellectual. It's safe, PC, kosher centrism, and poorly delivered.
A little kid regurgitating Republican Party talking points. Because what he was doing was saying that it was the most important thing for us to go and fight that war. But he wasn't willing to go and do it himself, despite the fact that he was about 18 years old at the time. And that's when I realized that, this is a guy who is not intellectually honest. He's a guy who doesn't have any personal integrity. And what he's attempting to do is get other young men to go and fight and die in his place.
Who's Ben Shapiro? Well, he's an anointed neocon snot-nose who walks around making Richard Pearl type faces where he tries to act scary and powerful. He just recycles a bunch of libertarian conservative thought and a bunch of other think tank stuff.
Ben Shapiro, again, offers that false alternative. So he is far more wicked and must be combated with a greater seriousness.
Do you believe there's a soul or something like a soul, a pattern of information that represents who you are that floats off the body and continues on? After
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know. And I don't think anybody has a great verifiable account of that. I have suspicions, but...
Dude, Ben Shapiro called Ron Paul an anti-Semite because he's against foreign wars and the Federal Reserve. Do you understand how twisted that is? How is that guy and me and Tucker Carlson the same political party?
Ben Shapiro said that if Rosenstein was ousted, Trump should be impeached. Ben Shapiro might as well be wearing a pussy hat.
Overall, both Ben and Milo have done an excellent job in demonizing identity politics in America, all the while sneakily shoving their identity politics down the throats of young Americans.
The Jews run everything? Well, we do. The Jews run all the banks? Well, we do. The Jews run the media? Well, we do.
While I obviously support the idea of every people on this earth being proud of their identity, I don't support the hypocrisy of people like Ben and Milo who tell others to abandon identity politics, all the while pushing these very same kinds of politics for their own benefit.
Ben Shapiro, who's a cynic, not an actual conservative.
And I mean, the whole thing, Ben Shapiro's whole thing is BTFOing the libs epic style with facts and logic. Like, that's his whole, we already said, there's only two kinds of people that know what's going on in the world. Mm-hmm. And the people on the other side that know are definitely getting a sense for what Tucker is doing, and they're not happy. And then they're activating kind of their conservative retards to go out and attack him for not being a conservative, for being like, well, Tucker, we developed this rationalist ideology around the idea of free markets, and now you're going out and you're counter signaling that. How, what are you doing here? And like when Ben Shapiro tried to BTFO Tucker epic style about well, what do you mean you would be against automated trucking? And Tucker's like, oh, I would outlaw it in a second. and he's like, how many families? He's like, there's 10 million people that drive for a living in the United States. It's the most common job. So no, I wouldn't allow the technology to just upend those people's lives like that. And Ben Shapiro was at a loss. He'd never spoken to, I mean, he was legitimately at a loss. I mean, he probably had to go home and do his homework a little bit, and then he could come up with some like epic style rebuttal. But
yeah, it took him like 3 months.
Yeah,
to
but
come up with
he had to go back to the drawing board. He couldn't do it on the fly.
Shapiro often plays this game, trying to conceal his identitarianism and ethnic nationalism by conflating his religious and or ideological values with his ethno-religious identity. Most problematically, he denounces identity politics and identitarianism for all other ethnic groups besides his own. His loyalties most certainly lie with Israel first, and I have no doubts that if chaos or war enveloped this country, Shapiro would abandon the nation of his birth and Aliyah his little ass over to Israel.
Shapiro is a corporatist. He is against net neutrality. He wants Verizon and Comcast to control your internet. He is a big budget Pentagon guy. He wants to pay for this by cutting Social Security. He's pro the medical industrial complex, predatory medicine system. He's a pro big empire guy.
Elitist, anti-populist, open borders, free trade, neoconservative who thinks he is of superior intelligence and has his head up, absolutely up his own ass. He is not one of us, and he's really of little use to MAGA and what MAGA stands for.
And now you're in my business again, trying to tell people not to come on my show. I'm about to get in your business big time, you little arrogant son of a bitch. Now go back to California, go back to Los Angeles, where you came from, with the whole atheist bent and the whole, Christ isn't God thing, all of that. How did you convince Texas Christians to sit there and prop up Glenn Beck and now you? You don't think I don't know everything about you, bro? You can't make anything, you parasite. Get behind me, Satan. We should pray for Ben Shapiro to find Christ.
Ben Shapiro was unrepentant in pushing for the Iraq war. Minimum 200,000 civilians died in Iraq. Thousands of our soldiers died. We did an offensive war against a country that didn't attack us and did torture to cover it up and then promoted the torturers. And Ben Shapiro, all along the way, mocked and degraded and disrespected the anti-war people who were right, factually right about everything. Shapiro went right along with the propaganda of Saddam Hussein, weapons of mass destruction, and Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. So here you have a guy, and that's the point about Ben Shapiro, genuinely odious in his beliefs, was for the Iraq war. You should go back and read his old writings.
I told you so about Ben Shapiro, what would happen if he ever had a conversation with another adult. The guy's made a career out of ponying a bunch of high school kids and clueless liberals in college. Anybody can do that. You look great. You look like a debater when you're basically just making fun of children. A trained lawyer with one subject and is bashing SJWs. And you're going to go argue with 15-year-olds, sometimes maybe a 19 or 18-year-old whoop-de-doo. Well, he already got his clock cleaned by Tucker Carlson. Because that's another grown-up. And apparently it happened again. He was being interviewed on BBC and walked out of the interview.
This little weasel hasn't grown a bit. Not only has he not grown a bit, you can see the bloodlust in his teeth. He can try, but he's humiliating himself right now. Watch this. People are losing their fear, Ben. Sorry, it's not really working. And if you guys try another false flag, it'll make it even worse for you guys. The only reason Shapiro's popular is because he has billionaire backers from Texas. No one knows who this little weasel was before. He's all propped up. He's amazing. That's why we're called unauthorized TV. He's authorized. That's an authorized man. All his popularity, my live numbers right now beat his, and he has billions in backing. Billions. Right now he's saying, well, he's making it completely ad hominem. He just attacked this man and not the argument whatsoever. Watch this. He's saying that no one knows him.
The point I'm trying to make is that your words are highly designed.
See, he's now projecting. He's saying you're getting paid because all he does is sell birch gold and sheets.